Docket numbers FIC 2017-155, Kirk, Carr versus Clinton Housing et al. In 2017-167, Kirk, Carr versus Liberty Place Affordable Housing Partnership et al. My name is Victor Perpetua. I've been designated as hearing officer. I note for the record that today is May 25th, 2017, and it's 2:38 p.m. Could the parties please identify themselves for the record, starting with the complainant?
I'm Kirk, Carr. And also, just so you're aware, we do intend to video this if that's okay.
That's fine.
Thank you.
And we have two respondents, is that the case?
Yes, David Hoops for Clinton Housing Inc.
I'm sorry, is it Hoops?
Hoops, and I should say with me is Jay Lawler from our firm, and also Arthur Isaacson, who's the chairman of the board of directors of Clinton Housing Inc.
Okay. Okay, and you are?
David Purvis. In the second case.
Okay.
There was Terry Patak from the company as a witness.
Okay. Well, let's start by swearing in everyone who's gonna, or might be testifying as a witness, and that would include you, Mr. Carr. I assume you're gonna, are you present testimony?
Yes.
Okay, then
Terry.
I'm gonna swear you all in together. Would you please stand and raise your right hands? If in doubt, stand up and raise your right hand. It can't hurt. Do you all solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God or under penalty of perjury?
I do.
All right, everyone have a seat. Starting with you, Mr. Carr. Would you say your name and say that you've been sworn for the record?
My full name is Maurice Kirk Carr Jr. I go by Kirk Carr.
And you've been sworn?
Yes.
Thank you. I know, but the recording doesn't know. Next,
Terry Patak Salcedo,
could you spell your last name for me?
PTAK-SALCEDO.
Say L.
CEDO.
Thank you. And you've been sworn as
I've been
well?
sworn in.
Thank you. Patak Salcedo? Thank you.
Arthur Isaacson, and I've been sworn.
Okay. All right, am I correct in thinking that the only different, oh no, there's two different, are these two different respondents?
Yes.
Two entirely different respondents?
There's a relationship, but they're different.
All right, then I guess we'll need to take them one at a time. 90 minutes to do two. Your public
Well,
agency.
there's, if I may,
You may.
with really one exception, I think the issues overlap.
All right. All right, well, let's start anyway with, so Mr. Isaacson, Mr. Carr, in 155, you made a request, I believe you attached it to your complaint. At least I think you did.
March 3rd, 2017, my request to Arthur Isaacson. This is what you're looking for?
Yeah, if you have an extra copy of it,
Yes. I have actually everything sort of organized. I have 4 copies if you
All right,
want.
now why don't you pass them out? Maybe we can.
This might make it a little bit.
May I ask, is there anything new
No,
here?
it's all just reorganized so that I do have a couple of pieces that I sent to you that are new, but which I may or may not use, but I wanted you to have them.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I've already been sent everything.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, I see. There's like a whole, all kinds of things in here.
So it's organized based upon the 4 factors. And then additional information on the organization. Okay.
A lot of this appeals. All right. So, look, point me to the request letter.
The request letter is just before the Here it is. This is the request letter.
But it's in here, which tab is it?
It's separate. It's in the very beginning, it's separate so that, because it, you know, it's stapled together.
I see. Okay. All right. All right, so I'm looking at a March 3rd, 2017 letter from Mr. Carr to Mr. Isaacson. Can we stipulate that that will be complainant's Exhibit A? Any objection to that being an exhibit in the case? All right. All right, I just want to make sure we were jurisdictionally good. It looks like the complaint was filed on March 21st, so certainly within 30 days of whenever there was a response to a March 3rd letter. So unless someone thinks otherwise, I don't see any jurisdictional issue on with regard to timeliness, at least. All right. What else do you want to tell me, Mr. Carr? What else do you want to make? And we can go through exhibits if you like.
Well, I mean, I think that I've tried to provide documentation on each of the four factors. First being that it's a government function, affordable housing is clearly something that the state of Connecticut has undertaken as a public policy and is supporting affordable housing through a variety of means and measures. Government funding was described in that piece that you're looking at right now.
Okay, all right, I want to do this in a slightly different order, and that is I just want to, so that we can all be referring to the same documents and so that I know what's evidence.
So this is in section 1, I believe.
Let's go through this, this book you have here in 2017-155. So the first thing in Section 1 is a statute.
Right.
The second thing is an OLR research report.
Correct. They're basically establishing that affordable housing and elderly housing are both government functions.
I guess it's evidence. Was there an objection to being made an exhibit?
I don't object to number 1 in this book or number 1.
Okay, and I'm specifically looking at this OLR research report, 2000-R-0678, dated July 3rd, 2000.
Right.
No objection to that? Okay, then we'll make that complainant's E. Section 2, the first thing I see is what looks like
This is a
invoice for a filing fee.
Right. So, but now we're talking about government funding in section 2, which is one of the standards. And this shows that the town of Clinton was billed for $105 as for a filing fee to establish Clinton Housing. And then you also have the Clinton Housing tax abatement presentation for Liberty Place that describes the funding, which includes self-amortizing debt, deferred non-amortizing debt, and low-income housing tax credits. Until yesterday, that was the extent of the funding that I was aware of, and at the time of this was filed.
Okay, Attorney Hoops, I thought I heard you say you had no objection to what was in this tab number 2, is that right? And so no objection to this?
That is correct.
Okay, so we're going to make this this record of, it looks like it's a bill for the filing fee. We're going to make it complainant's F. And then this
This is the
tax abatement presentation.
And the information, I guess it's...
Where did this tax abatement, do you know where this came from?
This was given to the Board of Selectmen of the town of Clinton at a Board of Selectmen's meeting. I'm sorry, I don't see a date on it. But that's where this material comes from.
Okay. Well, I hear no objections, so we'll make that complaint as G. Okay, just look for it. Before we go on, you look familiar to me, and this issue seems familiar to me.
Yes.
Have we?
Yes, we did this, I came in with Bruce Farmer and John Bennett, probably 2 months ago.
On
And
these,
it was the same issue. It was determined that town of Clinton didn't have the information that I was requesting. And so they said I should go to Mr. Isaacson, and so I went to Mr. Isaacson and to Neighborhood Works, and they also declined my request.
Thank you for refreshing my memory. Okay. I have this horrible feeling that I'd already decided this. And that I couldn't remember.
Deja
Okay.
vu all over.
We were in the wrong church the first time, or you were, and now we have, all right. All right, then we have tab 3, we got another.
This is government involvement in regulation. And the regulation for this, for these entities, includes the Department of Housing, the Clinton Fair Rent Commission, the Planning and Zoning Commission. I mean, this is clearly a very highly regulated activity.
All right, so the things that look like they would be treated as, offered as evidence, first I have August 17, 2016 amended minutes of the Board of Selectmen. Is there an objection?
I don't check anything in that tab.
All right, let's make that H.
So all of it, 3 is H?
No,
No.
I'm going to go through it document by document, even though there's been a general consent to these being made exhibits. I'd like to mark them separately.
So it's the August 17th minutes, is that what you're?
Yes, that's going to be H. It's a couple pages. Then we have a zoning application.
Right.
And then we have I without objection.
The minutes,
Then we have another set of minutes,
this is of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
May 9th, 2016. Without objection, we'll make that J.
And now Planning and Zoning minutes of July 11th. AR 1605A.
Oh, I see, and that starts, you've started with page 9 of those minutes?
Yes.
All right. That will be K. Pages 9 through 12. And then we have,
IRS letter, 501c3 letter,
okay,
that's exhibit.
L.
And then a Board of Selectmen ordinance, the Town of Clinton Fair Rent Commission, this would be under the jurisdiction of that commission.
Just for the record, I don't agree with that statement. I don't agree that it's relevant, or agree that whatever it's worth, that's the ordinance of town of Clinton. There's anything to do with any issues in this case.
Okay.
It is what it is.
Yeah, I think the appropriate thing to do with the ordinance is to take administrative notice of it unless there's some disagreement that this is the ordinance. I don't hear any, so it's like law. In other words, I'm not making the statutes exhibits, I'm not making regulations exhibits.
Right. All this is doing is establishing that this is a regulated entity, this is one of the regulators. of that entity.
All right. All right, then we're on to, oh no, we're still on tab 4. We have another selectmen, we have a selectmen's meeting of January 2nd, 1979.
What is that? Is that tab 4? You changed tab, you got it was another tab.
You're right, I moved on to tab 4.
So this is created by government. This is basically showing that Clinton House, this gives you the pedigree, if you will, for Clinton Housing, where it started, how it got started. The Committee to Study Elderly Housing was established on January 2nd, 1979.
I don't know how technical we are. I mean, what Mr. Carr just said, his argument, and he can argue
Okay.
whatever he wants, but I mean, what he just said about the pedigree, and that's, to the extent that's supposed to be evidence, I would object to it.
All right, but you don't have any objection to
No.
the omission of these minutes for, for what they say.
Right.
All right, so that's, I'll let the parties argue about what they mean. All right, so that's M, January 2nd, 79, Selectmen's meeting, and then there's another Selectmen's meeting, January 23rd, 1979. Up to M.
This is him also, both of these are.
Oh, did I double? You're right. No, the previous one was M.
So this is him.
This is N. Getting ahead of myself, or behind myself.
And February 27th. So this would be O.
All right, without objection, we'll make M,
Actually,
N, and
I think
O.
we're actually going past some things.
Are we? Okay.
Because these are two sides, these are printed on both sides.
You're right.
So
So let's back up a second.
maybe some,
I'm not keeping up with my stickers either. All right, let's back up. N was the January 23rd, 1979 minutes, or a portion of the minutes. And then on the back side of that is a different meeting.
right,
February 20th, 1979. We've got a page 3.
where do you want to make that?
Let's make it O. We'll go back and renumber the other O. So February 20, the selection from the February 20th, 1973. And then the next, which will be, just a second.
1979 maybe, or something.
Yeah, just a second. 79 is correct. So P will be February 27th, 1979. Selectmen's meeting minutes, starting at page 2, and then on the back side of that is page 2 of another. The minutes of another meeting, which will make Q. Jacket's optional, folks.
Okay, it's a little warm in here.
This is what happens when it's too cold for the AC to be on.
Between seasons.
I'm happy to know we're not spending your tax dollars on cooling. All right, now after Q, which were this page 2 of the May 8th, 79 Selectmen's meeting minutes, I have document, it says table of contents. What's this?
This
Mr.
is
Carr?
from it's called the Blue Book list of elected and appointed officials in the town of Clinton. This is dated May 3rd of 2012, which would have been contemporaneous with the establishment of housing.
Well, again, that's an argument, that's fine.
Okay.
I object to that, that's evidence.
All right, well, do we agree that,
I have no problem with that, with the document.
okay, and that it shows the members the Housing Authority, the Elderly Housing Committee, and then I guess not relevant to this case, the Indian River Turffield Committee.
Right.
As of when?
May the,
I see, they were appointed on November, it says 5 members appointed on November 17th, 83.
right.
And it, okay.
And this was effective, if you look at the bottom, it says printed May 3rd, 2012, so this was effective on May 3rd, 2012. And I know some of those dates, the term two, sometimes, you know, they forget the people that expected. But although on June 30th, they still, yeah, we're still good. As you can see, the Elderly Housing Committee has no term two, it's just appointed without terms.
All right. Mr. Hoops, can I conclude from this that these were the members on May 3rd, 2012? And I assume that Mr. Carr's only interested in the 4 names he's highlighted. Is that correct, Mr. Carr?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And you agree that those were the members of those committees on May 3rd, 2012? And that's what you are offering these to be, Mr. Carr? Okay. All right, so that was those pages from the Blue Book. Now we have a February 7th, 2012 Senior Housing Project Committee.
And a motion to, and seconded and unanimously approved to establish a not-for-profit, I presume, corporation, doesn't say corporation.
Where is it?
Mazzetti made a motion that committee members work with the Clinton Housing Authority to form a nonprofit. Fisher seconded the motion, which was unanimously
All right.
approved.
All right, so no objection to the agenda for what it says.
And
Right.
that is what exhibit.
That is S. And then we have,
This is the application certificate of incorporation, non-stock corporation, Secretary of State of Connecticut. And on the back side of it, listing name of incorporators, which coincide with the members of the committee, the 2 committees as indicated.
okay,
No objection.
no objection like that. T, that's a 3-page document, looks like.
Yep.
Okay, next, Mr. Carr.
Okay. And this is a letter from Mr. Isaacson dated December 29th to the Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Housing applying for a loan. And you notice at the top of the page, the return address on the letterhead is 54 Main Street, Clinton, Connecticut, which happens to be the town hall address for the town of Clinton, suggesting that this, well, I'm not going to make the argument.
You can. If you say it that way, that's fine. It's clear it's argument, not evidence.
Okay.
For
Well,
me, anyway.
I don't know whether it matters or not, but is that the address of the
Yes,
Clinton
it
Town
is the
Hall?
address of town.
Can we stipulate that that's the address of the Clinton
Yes,
Town Hall?
we may.
Okay. All right. And we're on to tab.
Now, tab 5 basically is recounting a similar case and its findings in January 23rd, 2002 of the FOIC Commission. You know, that it's parallel, but
Yeah, right, I understand. That's your argument.
and then 6 gives you the sort of the pedigree of all of these different entities and how they, you know, ended up being the affordable housing lending partnership. And behind that are all of the Secretary of State listings that basically support that flow chart.
You know, I believe, Mr. Carr, you prepared, if I may borrow you prepared this flow chart?
That's correct.
Okay.
To the best of my ability, I tried to follow what was
Right.
in the public record.
I don't have any objection to the public record documents. I think that the flow chart in some ways is a little misleading, and since you prepared it, I think it's evidence, you can certainly make the arguments.
Yeah.
Use that as a, you know.
I'm gonna treat it as argument.
Okay.
It's your analysis of the
Right.
facts. The other parties may or may not agree. But we'll take the remaining documents. And what are these remaining documents, Mr. Carr?
And then there's the tax abatement agreement with the town of Clinton.
No, I'm not there yet.
Okay, that's after, that's,
The
that's
public,
after all of the public, all of the Secretary of State. So do you want to take that as a whole, or you want to?
we can take the Secretary of State filings as a whole, sure.
And that's exhibit.
V.
Okay.
Okay.
And then the next one is the Board of Selectmen minutes from February the 15th. Liberty Place tax abatement, as well as the agreement with the Liberty Place Affordable Housing Partnership, which was, that was a new entity to me at that particular time, up at the FOIC and Clinton Housing.
The Board of Selectmen minutes, no objection, tax abatement agreement. Stipulate there is tax abatement agreement. This isn't signed, and honestly, I don't know if it's the final version. There is tax abatement, stipulate for that.
All right, well, why don't we call it what it is? It's a unexecuted tax abatement agreement.
Well, that was what was part of the minutes. I mean, if you wanted to say that this was, part of the minutes of the meeting.
Okay, so this was sort of an attachment to the minutes?
Correct.
Then I guess it's part of Exhibit X.
Correct.
Okay. Is it just in there?
I think we're just up to W.
I'm sorry, where, W?
W is these February 15th,
Okay.
2017 minutes with the attached
That's right, Z.
and unexecuted tax abatement
I'm
agreement.
sorry, I must have got
We got-
lost. I thought V was the Secretary of State
It was
documents.
the,
Oh, that's
V.
V I had.
It's V, so wouldn't X be next?
Or
No, W, I'm
W.
sorry. I'm sorry.
it's a long song to sing to get to W,
I'm
I
a
agree.
little alphabet challenge.
All right, and I assume this property description was also attached, right?
And the only other, and I sent this to Mr. Hoops yesterday, but the other thing that is, since I submitted that
I'm sorry, we need to back up because I see a tab 7 with a applicant certification. Is that also part of the?
I'm sorry, you're right.
Okay.
And this basically is showing that Mr. Isaacson described this property as being less than a half mile from Route 1.
In this case, it doesn't really have anything
Yeah, I'm not sure.
remotely to do with this hearing. There's all, it just doesn't have anything to do with it.
What does it have to do with the hearing, Mr. Carr?
It's basically showing how this was described to the Department of Housing, and I think misleadingly. So and maybe it has something to do with a different case than this. If you want to not accept it, I'm not going to plant my, would not have a strong objection to that.
All right, then I'm going to sustain the objection. I'm just going to mark it for identification as X. For the non-lawyers in the room, marking it for identification means I'm just giving it a letter so it can be identified in the record, but it's not evidence in the case. All right.
Yeah, since, and that's everything that I had said in my complaint.
Okay.
Since then, the property at Liberty Place has been sold to Liberty Place Affordable Housing Limited. This is the deed to that, which I
Extra
sent
for
you,
me, thanks.
which I sent you
Thanks.
yesterday.
And I know that's what this.
And then the other is,
Let me just, so, up to Y for this D.
I thought I had 4 copies of this. Well, that's okay, I don't need to get a copy for myself. But these are this is basically a GIS of the property, the location of the property, which shows 8 Liberty Place LLC still owning it at that time. And as of a day or so after that, this sign went up indicating that it is a state of Connecticut Housing Financial Authority project.
No,
All right.
I don't want to be.
No, I understand. All
But
right.
if this is offered, if this GIS is offered to prove who owned it on a day it was printed.
No, it's
there'd have
basically
be
to show you its
something.
location, and actually, the thing that I really want to say is that the sign that you see was here,
Okay. That's fine. That's
basically
fine.
where the sign was located.
All right,
No,
so you-
no objection to either that or the sign.
All right, so Z is a printout of, it looks like a Google Maps image of 8 Liberty Place and the surrounding properties, is that right? Mr.
Correct.
Carr? All right.
With a GIS overlay.
Okay. Overlaid by whom though?
It was overlaid by me on a GIS, on a QGIS system.
Okay, so the overlay is yours, all right.
Well, it's from the Geisic's land, what do they call it, layer.
I'll stipulate that accurately shows the property. I
Okay.
can't speak to the neighbors, but it is true.
All right.
That's the
Thank
piece
you.
we're talking about.
I don't think it's gonna be. And then finally, I guess we'll make it double A, you ran me the alphabet, it hasn't happened in a long time, is a photo of a sign that says Liberty Place, Clinton, Connecticut, Connecticut Housing Finance Authority, State of Connecticut, Daniel P. Malloy, Governor, and so forth. We're gonna call that double A. All right. So we have all your documentary evidence, Mr. Carr.
You do indeed.
Do you have testimonial evidence that you want to add? In other words, do you want to testify as to any facts that are not shown in these documents?
I think the documents are pretty self-explanatory. I
Okay.
gather they're arguable, so I would, be interested in hearing the arguments. I've seen what you've received.
What have I received?
I believe you
Well,
received all of
Yeah,
this.
Mr. Hearing Officer, I did submit a courtesy copy of our submission, but I have an extra
Okay.
one.
Did you file it with us already?
I filed it yesterday.
Okay. Didn't make its way into the file.
I
But-
thought that might be the case, so I brought an extra copy.
Okay, if you brought an extra one, I'll take an extra one, sure.
That one?
My. Folks, you give me a lot of reading to do.
Wow.
That's
You
all
don't
right.
actually- yeah, wow.
I was an English major, I can do it. Went to law school and everything. All right. Well, how would you folks like to proceed on this? It looks like Clinton Housing Authority is there documentary evidence in here?
There is, and what I had planned to do, and I can switch the order or do it different ways, I plan to make a hopefully fairly short statement / argument. I wanted to ask questions, a few questions of a couple witnesses.
Mhm.
If you'd like to kind of go through, we could certainly mark these as exhibits.
I'd like to do that, yeah.
They're appropriate to do that, so I could, the first part of it's just our brief. I assume that doesn't get marked.
No.
And then there's the second section, I can call the appendix, that's the table of contents. And will we be using numbers or letters?
We'll use numbers.
Okay. The first document I'd like to offer is an affidavit of Arthur Isaacson. I will ask him some questions, but if they would expedite things if we submit an affidavit. And again, I would like to say for the record, I did email all this to Mr. Carr yesterday.
Okay, Mr. Carr, do you have an objection to the introduction of the affidavit in this case?
I have an objection.
All right, let me just sign it here.
That's Exhibit A.
There's an appendix, tab A.
There it is.
And again, there is a table of contents at the beginning of the appendix.
So that's going to be number one, is
That's
that?
going to be number one.
the executed operating agreement of Liberty Place Affordable Housing General Partner LLP, which for the record is the general partner of the respondent in the second case, which is a limited partnership.
And I'm sorry, that's the next.
That would be tab B.
Okay.
And that's going to be respondents too, but before you go on. First. Okay. Tell me again about the legal relationship between Liberty Place.
Right. The respondent in the second case is a limited partnership.
Okay.
Liberty
And the
Place
respondent in the second case, remind me, is?
is Liberty Place Affordable Housing Limited Partnership. It's okay, I'll just call that the LP or the limited partnership. It's become a mouthful.
Is it Affordable Housing General Partner? Is that,
No, two different entities.
so,
This is the operating agreement of a different entity called Liberty Place Affordable Housing General Partner LLC, which is so named because it's the general partner of the limited partnership.
Gotcha.
so that's Exhibit 2?
That's
Yeah. Probably says that in here, Mike.
Right, Exhibit 3 is the limited partnership agreement of the limited partner.
Is that tab C here?
That would be tab C. Right.
All right. So that's your Exhibit 3. Okay.
Next one.
I'm gonna, unless you voice an objection, Mr. Carr, I'm gonna assume that you don't have an objection.
Next one, which is tab D, is simply a Wikipedia printout definition, section 8, with housing in parentheses afterwards. And there'll be some testimony about this. Not this document specifically, but how section 8, how it differs from what we're talking about here.
All right. I don't know what to do with this evidence.
It's actually, some of these are really more aids to our legal argument. They may not really be appropriate to market as exhibit.
I guess this is Wikipedia,
Right.
Yeah.
and I guess you're entering it as expert.
It's really something we refer to in our brief.
Right.
As a resource, as a research resource. It doesn't need to be considered.
Okay.
It is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. If for some reason I need it in order to make findings, I'll make that clear in the proposed decision, either that I've taken administrative notice of something that I think I can take administrative notice of, that is something that's a generally agreed fact, and give you an opportunity to contest that. But I don't think that's going to happen. I'm guessing that it just helps explain to me, who doesn't know much about Section 8 housing, how it works. Is that?
And I do want to make really clear that the kind of project we have is not Section 8, but what
Okay.
we're doing is contrasting it.
Okay.
The reason I'm bringing that up is Mr. Carr, not to digress, but Mr. Carr is relying on a decision of this commission called First Church. First Church involved is a very different kind of animal, known as a project-based Section 8 project. That's just so Mr. Robinson understands.
Thanks, that's
why I'm doing all this. The next document, which if it's debated would be number 4, is simply a printout from a website called Affordable Housing Online. And the second page talks about the First Church project that I was just mentioning, and it indicates it is indeed a project-based Section 8 project. That's what it is, and that's the purpose for the offer.
Any objections, Mr. Carr?
No, I guess there are two parts with the Section 8. One is about, is it a government function or not, and the other one is it government regulated. I think that whether this is a Section 8 project or not is not relevant to whether is a government function, it might be relevant to whether it's regulated by HUD, but I don't, so I mean, I think the question is relevance, you know, and it might be relevant to one piece, but not to another piece. And the fact that the first church was HUD or not HUD really doesn't, I think, reflect on this. But that's,
Well, that's all argument, and
The next document, which is tab F, which again would be 5 if it's a full exhibit, is simply a form of the contract that HUD requires the owner of a project-based Section 8 project to enter into with a local housing authority. And again, the only purpose is to show the extent of the regulation that's applicable in a situation like the commission dealt with in the first church case.
is this part of Exhibit F? Is that what?
That would be tab F.
Okay, and what is, this is what, a number?
This would be 5.
Number 5, okay.
all right, well, without objection, we'll make our respondents 5.
6 is that Mr. Carr put in an OLR, Office of Legislative Research Report. We have 1 too. And this has to do with landlord participation in the Section 8 voucher program, rental assistance program. And simply offered to, it's again, probably not evidence, but it's a supplement to our research, simply to show that all landlords in the state of Connecticut, private sector, public sector, and everything else, are legally required to do that Section 8. They cannot legally discriminate against prospective tenants because they're using the Section 8 voucher program. And I'll explain what that is.
That's number 6, then?
That would be 6.
Okay,
The next one, which is tab H, which would be 7.
H.
8.
okay.
That is an agreement that the limited partnership, just the respondent in the second case, entered into with the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority, which I'll call CHFA. And it's simply offered to show what regulation is imposed on the owner under the kind of project that we have, which is, again, very different than the one at the First Church, it's sort of to compare and contrast. That's the purpose, and that's what it is.
Okay. Without objection, we'll make that 7.
Okay, and 8 is for the same purpose. It's another agreement between the limited partnership and CHFA. This one happens to get recorded on the land records, and just shows you what regulation there is and what regulation there is.
And that's what tab, I'm sorry.
That would be that's tab I, and would be exhibit 8. Final one is tab J, which is exhibit 9. It's simply a printout from the IRS website. It talks about one of the arguments that Mr. Carr makes is that we're designated as something called a public charity. Obviously, he's seizing on the word public, and this is simply to explain, by way of supplementation of what's already in the brief, what that term of art really means. It's something different than Mr. Carr generally understands.
And that's J?
That would be tab J.
That's what number is that?
That would be number 9.
Okay.
Appreciate the well-organized presentations and notes. Makes it easier for me, thank you.
All right. May I proceed?
Yes, please do.
As we know, there's two matters. Most of what I say will apply to both cases. The main issue here is whether certain private entities are functional within a government agency such that they're subject to free information. Two entities are what I've referred to previously as the limited partnership. The other one is the client I actually represent, which is Clinton Housing, Inc. I like to explain what the affiliation is. We had a limited partnership, we call limited partnerships as a general partner. General partner is an LLC. We put in evidence the operating agreement of the LLC. The LLC is called Place Affordable Housing General Partner LLC. And the LLC has two members. Clinton Housing Inc. is one of the two members, happens to be a minority, non-controlling member. The reason I put the operating agreement in is to show that my client, Liberty Housing Inc., actually has no say in the day-to-day management of the LLC. Yet the LLC, in turn, is the entity that controls limited partnerships. The point being that even though Clinton Housing does have an ownership interest in the LP, it's a minority silent partner, non-controlling, really has no day-to-day say. The party who actually controls the project is the other member of the general partner. I know the structure is a little complex, but that's the way these deals are put together. And that's a company that my brother counsel actually represents, not in this case, called Mutual Housing Association, South Central Connecticut, Inc., DBA, NeighborWorks / New Horizons. And I'll just call it NeighborWorks, if that's okay, because that's quite a mouthful. The purpose of the limited partnership is to develop and operate a 21-unit affordable housing project in Clinton. The project is funded by two funding sources. It got $1.95 million, more or less, dollars of private equity from a private investor. Private investor is NEP or NCP? NDC. It's called NDC for short. There's some Roman numerals in there. This is in our brief. Well, that's a private investor and not a governmental body. And the reason they invest is they get, as a result of their investment, they get tax credits. Tax credits are allocated by CHFA. They're in it. The other funding source is mortgage loans from CHFA. And those loans, by their terms, have to be paid back, which is going to be important for our argument. The tax credits are what we call low-income housing tax credits, known by the acronym LIHTC, which some people, including me, call LIHTC. And I'll be using that term. I'll be using, it's very common for projects like this to be financed through LIHTC tax credits. Often a combination of LIHTC tax credits and a loan from CHFA. Sometimes there's loans from other sources. In this case, I'm going to refer to our project and that kind of project as a LIHTC project.
Okay. Let me ask you one thing, just so I
Sure.
make sure I'm following. The tax credits go to the investor, is that right?
Right.
Okay. So the tax credits themselves are not funding for the LLC. They
No.
are a benefit accruing to the
They're an
investor.
inducement to induce private investors. A lot of big companies like Chevron do this.
Okay.
Because they have income that they would like to have credits to apply against.
Yeah.
And they get certain other tax benefits, so they do it not for altruistic reasons, but because it's good for their bottom line.
Okay.
And that's kind of what makes the whole process work. And
Mhm.
there's also obviously the loan component.
Yeah.
And I'll get into that in a little more detail. The critical point is that, unlike the kind of project that was involved in the First Church decision of this commission, there's no free government money involved here. There's no rent subsidies. And I digress, there's one exception to that, but it applies to everybody who provides housing. And that is, any tenant, any project who meets certain income qualifications can get a Section 8 voucher from HUD, and they can use that voucher anywhere. So we're no different than anybody else. We don't know if there are going to be any such tenants in the project, but so when I say there's no rent subsidies, I don't mean the Section 8 vouchers, because that would apply to everybody. There's no special rent subsidies. The rents are market rent, and it's incumbent on the tenant to have the money to pay the rent. The market rents are what support the project. It's what allows the project to pay back the loans from CHFA, and maybe even give a modest return to the tax credit investor, although they're not really in it to get a return, they're really in it for the tax benefits. The only thing that's different between a LIHTC project, other than the funding sources, and a regular residential housing project is that the exchange for getting the tax credits and getting the loan from CHFA, which is at a below market interest rate, you have to agree to really two income restrictions. You can only rent to people who make under a certain percentage of the area median income. And that percentage can vary from project to project. In this case, it's 50%. The other restriction is that the tenants cannot pay more than a certain percentage, in this case 30% of their income for rent. And there's a very important distinction between that and a Section 8 project, and that in a LIHTC project like this one, if a tenant, let's say the percentage is 30, you can't pay more than 30% of your income for rent. If the percentage is 30, and in order to pay the market rent, you'd have to pay 40% the income. It isn't that the government gives you the extra money or gives the project extra money. You're just not eligible to live at that project. Whereas it's very different. In a project-based Section 8 project, it's really the exact opposite. That is designed for very poor people. And there is a rent subsidy that's provided by HUD, free government money to the project to defray operating expenses, because obviously the people who are living in those apartments cannot afford to pay a market rent. It's a very different situation. And that basically there's just no free money. There's no free government money.
I don't want to digress, but
That's fine.
I just want to understand. So, because I don't understand much, if anything, about Section 8. So from what you said, it sounds to me that Section 8 vouchers, they're not money. They are in lieu of money,
Well,
paid back.
no, a Section 8 voucher is money, and in any project, in any housing project in the state of Connecticut, and you can't be turned away because you use a voucher.
Mhm.
But if you apply for, you could be turned away for a lot of reasons, but not because you're using a Section 8 voucher. And if you have a Section 8 voucher, basically the way it works is HUD, the tenant pays what the tenant can pay,
Yeah.
and HUD sends the rest directly to the landlord.
Oh, they do.
So,
Okay.
so there is a form of subsidy, but it's a subsidy that applies to every single housing project of any kind in the state. So when I say there's no subsidies, I mean no subsidies in the sense that there is in a project-based Section 8 project, which is a project, this is like the First Church project, which is a project where all or a portion of the units are set aside for Section 8, and they're for very poor people. And basically the government, HUD, pays most of the rent. They basically pay most of the money to run the project, and the tenants pay very modest amounts based on their modest incomes. Totally different situation. Here we have market rents, no free money from the government. Tenants can't find a way to pay the rent, they don't get to live there, it's that simple. So, who is in charge in a LIHTC project of making sure, by the way, in a LIHTC project is like this, there's no HUD involvement at all, there's no public housing authority involvement. There is a regulatory agency that's involved, and that's CHFA. And CHFA does have the responsibility to make sure that if somebody's using tax credits that they allocate and getting a loan from them, that they're following the rules. And the way they do that is they come in once a year and they do a spot check of the files. They look at the tenants, I'm not the expert or witness here, there are questions, but essentially they look at the files on a spot basis. They pick a few at random and they look at them and they make sure on an annual basis that the owners follow the rules. The important point, and I'll get to this in a second why it matters, there's no day-to-day involvement by CHFA in running the project. They don't tell the owner what to do, they don't tell the owner how to do it. You have to follow these fairly simple rules, that there's a maximum amount of income that the tenants can have, and a maximum amount of the tenant's income can be used for rent. They have to follow those rules, but they don't tell them what to do. There's no day-to-day oversight, there's no day-to-day involvement, and that's what makes it night and day different than the project-based Section 8 project that was at issue in First Church. As I mentioned, there's two entities involved, and both cases, one issue, well, the issue is whether either or both are functional equivalents of a government agency, such that FOI applies to them. And here's the one place where the issue is different, depending on whether you're talking about my client, Mr. Purvis's client. My client doesn't own the project, number one. It won't operate. Number two, it won't operate the project. Three, it didn't borrow any money from CHFA. And number three, there's no control over the development project or the operation of the project.
Say that all to me again.
Okay, number one,
Yeah.
Clinton Housing doesn't own the project. Number two, Clinton Housing won't operate the project. Number three, Clinton Housing didn't borrow any money from CHFA. Number four, this is really the punchline, Clinton Housing is not subject to any governmental regulation of any kind, for a simple reason, that's not the owner of the project, it's not the operator of the project. So I think for Clinton Housing, that's the beginning of the end of the inquiry. But that's the one place where the issues are different. But I'm going to go on and analyze the issue on the premise that we are the owner of the property, just for the sake of argument, because it's really almost as clear when you go through that analysis. As Mr. Carr pointed out, there's a lot of case law on this. And by the way, we cite in our brief Connecticut case law and federal case law. The Federal FOI Act is very similar. It's been recognized by our courts numerous times. I believe it's been recognized by the FOI Commission that federal law is very persuasive authority because of the similarities. And there happens to be a lot of federal law on issues that there is no law in Connecticut. And as Mr. Carr points out, the case law under both federal and state law recognizes four criteria that you look at. You don't have to satisfy all, not any one particular is dispositive. And I'm going to go through each of the four. First one is whether government functions being performed. And Mr. Carr's argument is that, oh well, housing's government function. Well, within the meaning of the cases, it actually isn't. The case law makes clear, we've cited a number of cases, mainly in the federal area, that the gist of it is that when the cases talk about government function, they're talking about a traditional core government function. They're not talking about something that's like here, like housing, even affordable housing, that's normally, typically done by the private sector, but government sometimes does it. There was a federal case I cited that said, this is I think very opposite, that said transportation within the meaning of FOI is not a government function. Obviously, governments do provide public transportation, but it's something traditionally, it's something that's also done by the private sector. And there's actually an interesting decision with this commission called Santangelo versus New London Covenant Shelter, the Covenant Shelter of New London, which the commission found providing for the shelter needs of poor and underprivileged people is not a government function. And that's a great example, because obviously governments do run shelters. Governments do sometimes provide for sheltering for disadvantaged people, homeless people. It's also done quite often by the private sector. So it's often done by the private sector. It's not a government function for purposes of an FOI analysis. And then that's the case here. Obviously, affordable housing for the very, very poor is something that's provided by government. There's public housing projects in all major cities and in many towns. But that doesn't make the provision of affordable housing government function. But if it did, think about it for a second. If the provision of affordable housing is a government function that makes you potentially subject to FOI, means that any developer who, for profit, goes out and builds cheaper housing that people of moderate means can afford, that makes them perform a government function, potentially subject to FOI. That's not the law. It really doesn't make any sense. It would open up a gigantic Pandora's box. And again, the First Church case involved a project-based Section 8 project that is much closer. I actually think First Church is a very arguable decision, so whether it's really correct under the law. But putting that aside, it involves a project-based Section 8 project for very, very poor people, where they're getting free money from the government to provide the housing needs of very poor people, and it's much closer to a public housing project. It's really replaced, that kind of thing has really replaced public housing projects, which aren't being built anymore. So there was a stronger, much, much stronger argument there than there is here. The next, I'll move on. The next criterion is receipt of government funds. And, first place, we got $1.95 million from a entirely private, profit-motivated investor. There's no question that's not government money. There's no question we got a substantial amount of money, $8.3 million, I think is the right number, from CHFA. It's not free money, it's a loan. And although there's not a whole lot of case law on this, there's no cases that ever say if you borrow money that's from the government or guaranteed by the government, that means you're getting government money that makes you potentially subject to FOI. And as a matter of fact, the cases, I think, make fairly clear that in order for an entity to be government funded, it doesn't mean a couple things. It clearly doesn't mean that you're providing a service for a fee to government. And I mean, there's cases by the appellate court called a driver test that says that even the company that was doing emissions testing for the state for a fee is not providing, it's not getting government money. Government, I mean, if that's getting government money, then if the state hired me, which they never have, then I'd be government subject to FOI. That's not the case. But the other situation where I will acknowledge it's not as developed the case law is well, what if you borrow money from the government that you have to pay back? Is that government funding? I mean, it isn't, and it can't be. There's no cases that say that it is. And again, if we think this through, if borrowing money from the government makes you the equivalent of a government agency that makes you potentially subject to FOI, That means if you get a VA loan, if you get an FHA loan, if you're General Motors and you get a huge infusion of equity that you have to pay back, does that make General Motors the government? They got government money, but I don't think anybody would say that borrowing money or getting an equity infusion like General Motors did, that's what the cases are talking about when they say government funded. It's pretty clear that what they mean, really what they have to mean, is the government is giving you free money to carry out some government function. The third criterion is the level of governmental involvement. And, you know, Mr. Carr makes the point, he's right, that we're subject to government regulation, and you know, everybody is. He makes the point that we had to go get a zoning approval, we're subject to zoning regulation, everybody is. If needing the government, you know, if just the mere fact that you're subject to some regulation makes you subject to FOI, that FOI applies to everybody and everything, because, you know, everybody's regulated. In this case, the case law is crystal clear. There's a decision of the U.S. Supreme Court of Forsham that we cite. There's a decision of our appellate court of Hallis that we cite, and they both say the same thing. That, what you have to have is you have to have a very high level of government involvement, and the cases say you need to have day-to-day control and involvement, and an annual random spot check in your files to make sure you're following the rules doesn't apply. That would mean, again, if you take Mr. Carr's argument's logical conclusion, you know, anybody, we all pay taxes, most of us anyway, and we're all subject to audit by the IRS, and it's really not that different than the audit that CHFA does. This doesn't. That's not the kind of government involvement or regulation that the case law is looking at. The last criterion is formed by the government, and we're talking about two private entities that weren't formed by the government. You know, what Mr. Carr's really conflating two things, and again, Mr. Isaacson will testify about this. I won't belabor it right now, but you had some people in the town of Clinton who had a personal interest in the topic of affordable housing, felt that there wasn't enough affordable housing in the town. And before Clinton Housing ever existed, the way they tried to work on that interest is they volunteered their services to the town of Clinton. It was an ad hoc committee, as Mr. Carr pointed out, it was an ad hoc committee of the town of Clinton that was formed to look into this. There were also people on the Housing Authority Commission, and naturally these are the kind of people who were interested in trying to get some more affordable housing in Clinton, which there was a great need, there still is a great need for. And what happened in a nutshell is they spent a lot of time exploring this, and it turned out they couldn't do it under the aegis of the town. The reason they couldn't do it under the aegis of the town is that the town would have had to sign the town's name to loans, and when push came to shove, the town just was not willing to commit the town coffers to that. And the idea of a town-sponsored affordable housing died. And it's not really surprising that the people, and it was determined the only way to do this was privately. It was a private company, not affiliated with the town. So people who were interested in doing this, some of whom had previously volunteered their time in the town to this end, took another course. They formed a private group, Clinton Housing, to do the same thing. It's actually been successful. The important point is there a connection? Yeah, in terms of the genesis, but that doesn't mean it's formed by the government. The important point is that the board of directors of Clinton Housing is not designated by any agency, official body of the town, wasn't appointed by the town. The town didn't tell anybody what to do. As people, as private citizens, went and did it on their own. You know, and one thing that Mr. Bennett kind of seizes on is the fact that a lawyer named John Bennett, who happened to be the town attorney, also prepared the incorporation papers pro bono for Clinton Housing, and he did send a bill for the filing fee, it's $100 and change, to the town. I don't know why he did that. Secretary, it's reasonable for her, just did it. And, you know, Mr. Carr kind of makes much of that, but he's aware of this fact, but he didn't choose to point it out, which is that when the mistake was discovered, Clinton Housing reimbursed $100. Clinton Housing paid the money. So it's a pretty thin reed on which to, and yeah, apparently there was a letter using the town hall address, and I'm not sure why that was, but I'll ask Mr. Isaacson, I didn't know the answer, but I'm sure he's very innocent. You know, this is a private corporation, wasn't formed by the town, and, you know, there's even less of a relationship with the town when we're talking about the other respondent, Mr. Purvis's client, the limited partnership. So the entities at issue here are private entities. They're doing something that is frequently and primarily done by the private sector. They don't get free government money. They're not subject to day-to-day regulation by the government. They weren't formed by the government, and the FOI just doesn't apply. That's what I have to say. And I would like to ask a few questions of Mr. Isaacson and Mr. Patak. We'll see if I make this. Is there a particular place you'd like Mr. Isaacson to sit?
No.
Could I just
No, somewhere at the table,
Okay.
near a microphone, over there would be fine. Yeah, that works.
Okay,
That's good, that's fine.
we'll have to turn these on or they're live.
Let me make sure they're live. I think they're all live. Sure. Nope, they're good. Go ahead.
Mr. Isaacson, let's start with that. Familiar with that letter on behalf of Clinton Housing, where the town hall address was listed?
Yes, I am.
And why was that?
Well, at the time, we didn't have an address, and the first selectman says, feel free to use it as long as you want, you need to.
Now, you're the chairman of the board of directors, Mr. Isaacson,
Correct.
of Clinton Housing. You have been since its inception,
Yes.
is that right? And just want to clear something up. The name at some point changed from Clinton Senior Housing to Clinton Housing, is that right?
That's correct.
And very briefly, what was the reason for that?
During the application phase for the Department of Housing funding for pre-development, well, I wasn't, but our consultant was told at a meeting with the Department of Housing that we could apply as elderly housing, but it's likely we wouldn't get any money.
Okay, so you at some point decided that elderly wasn't going to work, and you just went general affordable.
I would point out that after that funding round was done, turns out the truth was no elderly housing project was funded.
Okay. But just to avoid confusion, I'll refer to the corporation as Clinton Housing regardless of the time frame, if that's not
Okay.
going to confuse you. Okay. And it's a non-stock corporation,
Correct,
it's not profit,
correct,
it's a 501c3.
correct.
And the purpose is to provide affordable housing for people in the town of Clinton, it's safe
Correct.
to say. And before Clinton Housing Inc. was formed, what if any activities did you have in the area of affordable housing in the town of Clinton?
Well, there was no affordable housing in town of Clinton. The only housing,
What were you doing, if anything, to try to create affordable housing?
I was a member of the Clinton Housing Elderly Housing Building Committee, trying to find a place to build housing.
And that was sponsored by, that was a,
It was a town
Sponsored by
ad hoc
the
committee
town.
appointed by First Selectman McCusker in
okay, and
2000.
what happened with that committee?
Well, eventually ceased to function because some of them died, some of them moved away, and essentially it was very difficult to get a quorum. Plus the fact that when we learned that the town wouldn't support, First Selectman said he wouldn't sign a loan for us as a town agency, then at that point we formed a private nonprofit, and didn't seem to be any purpose anymore to the other committee.
Okay, and were you directed by anybody, any town official or body to form that private corporation?
No.
Okay. Now, other than yourself, were any of the original directors of Clinton Housing also members of the ad hoc Affordable Housing Town Committee you mentioned?
Say that again?
Other than yourself, were you the only one from the ad hoc town committee
No.
that became a director of the corporation?
No, Faith Fisher.
There was one other.
And John Neary wasn't part of the Elderly Housing Committee. It was, and Dolly was Eddie, I believe.
Okay, well, let me cut to the chase. You had 5 original directors. 2 had been members of the ad hoc town committee,
Right.
right? 2 happened to be commissioners of the Housing
Housing Authority.
Housing Authority, and 1 didn't have any connection.
That's
to
correct.
those. Okay. And the town, no role in appointing board members?
Let me go back. I remember the name of the other party. It was David Long, and he's since moved away and has been replaced by Dolly Mazzetti.
Well, anyway, the point I want to get at is what if any role does the town have in appointing or designating board members of Clinton Housing?
No,
And what affiliation, if any, does Clinton Housing have with the town of Clinton or any of its boards or agencies?
no.
Okay, and now, the corporation documents were prepared by a lawyer named John Bennett, is that right?
Right.
How did that come about? How did he get involved?
I asked him to.
And why'd you ask him to go?
Well, we didn't have any money. We needed to get some pro bono work.
Now, he's a, to your knowledge, is he an employee of the town of Clinton?
No, he's not.
So is he a private attorney in private practice? with
Private attorney
many
firm,
clients?
yes.
And his office isn't even in Clinton?
It's in Essex.
Okay. And how much did Bennett charge?
He didn't. The only charge we have from Bennett is $105 for a filing fee.
Okay, and what's the story? You heard Mr. Carr, you saw Mr. Carr put in a document that showed that at one point he would send a bill to the town for the filing fee?
Apparently,
What happened?
but that was, Mr. Carr pointed it out, and John Bennett realized that his office had mistakenly billed the town, and he sent us the bill.
Now, in 2016, Clinton Housing signed a contract to buy the property that you've now started construction on, is that right? Okay, or I should say, the limited partnership has?
That's correct.
Okay. And would it be safe to say that it was the board of directors who made that decision of Clinton Housing?
Yes.
Okay, and what directions or instructions, if any, were the board of directors of Clinton Housing given by the town or any town official or agency to go ahead and sign that?
And then the town wasn't consulted.
Okay. And in 2016, Clinton Housing engaged design professionals to start a preliminary design, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and in 2016, Clinton Housing applied for and obtained zoning approvals for the project, is that right?
Correct.
And what directions or instructions, if any, were issued by the town to Clinton Housing to go hire a design professional?
No.
And what about the zoning? What involvement did they have in making, in directing you how to go about the zoning process?
No.
Okay. And how did Clinton Housing pay for the initial design, the zoning work, and the other pre-development things that had to be done?
Pre-development funds from the Department of Housing,
In what amount?
$216,000.
Okay, and what,
I'm sorry, I
$216,000.
didn't hear where the funds came from.
Department of Housing, pre-development loan.
okay, and who made the decision that Clinton Housing would apply to DOH, Department of Housing, for that $216,000 or whatever? it
Our
was?
board of directors.
And what instructions or directions were given to the board of directors, if any, by the town or any official or agency of the town to make that application to the Department of Housing?
No, as a matter of fact, as I pointed out, the first selectman said he wouldn't sign a loan. They didn't want anything to do with it.
Now, A Liberty Place was purchased actually earlier this month, wasn't it?
Correct.
And Clinton Housing wasn't the purchaser, is that right?
That's correct.
Who was the purchaser?
The limited partnership.
Okay, and can you just indicate, in general lay terms, what is the relationship between Clinton Housing and the limited partnership?
We're a minority member of the general partner.
Okay, and who are the owners of the limited partnership, you know?
Our limited partnership?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what you call them, owners. We're
No, no,
board of
not,
directors.
no, not Clinton Housing, the limited partnership that bought the land.
Oh, that would be Mutual Housing South Central
Okay,
Connecticut.
that's what we're calling NeighborWorks.
Right,
Right?
correct.
And Clinton Housing,
They're a minority member, yes.
and anybody else?
Oh, and I'm not sure whether they are a partner, I'd have to look at the documents, but that would be NDC.
Okay. Well, NDC owns the majority of the equity in the
Right.
partnership, doesn't it?
But, yeah, but I'm not sure that technically partner member in terms of,
Okay, but anyway, the three parties involved in it are the private investor, NeighborWorks, and Clinton Housing.
correct.
And, move it along. Clinton Housing has no day-to-day say in the management of the project at this point, is that right?
That's correct.
Um, That's all I have for this witness.
Mr. Carr, you have any cross for this witness?
Yes, thank you. The loan for $216,000 for the pre-development, was that a forgivable loan?
It is forgivable, but that doesn't mean forgiven.
The 216.
Yes, it's forgivable.
Okay. And the other loans that not you, but that are going to be used from the Housing Authority, are those forgivable?
Housing Authority?
Right, the
You
loans.
mean CHFA?
Yeah, those loans.
I don't know what the terms of the other parties have in terms of forgivable. I don't believe so. They all have to be paid back.
I mean, that's what's been said repeatedly, is that they have to be paid back. But
It's my
certainly, the
understanding.
$216,000 was a forgivable loan. In Clinton, there is a Clinton Housing Authority. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, say again?
Clinton, there is a Clinton Housing Authority?
There is a Clinton Housing, I ought to point out to you that that loan was paid back.
I understand.
Even though it was forgivable, it was paid back.
May I interrupt, which loan was paid back?
The 216,000
So it was paid back?
was paid back.
Okay.
In Clinton, there's a Clinton Housing Authority. Two of its members are on your board, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. The Clinton Housing Authority also operates some affordable housing in Clinton, does it not?
Yes, 30 units.
30 units at Glen Haven, is that?
That's correct.
So that is, now is, the Clinton Housing Authority is an entity that's appointed by the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Clinton?
I'm not sure how to talk about appointed. If a member needs to be replaced, then a recommendation is made by whatever political party they were from.
Right.
And then that recommendation goes to the Board of Selectmen, who may or may not take their advice and appoint someone to fill a seat. But they do appoint it, yes.
Right. So the Clinton Housing Authority is appointed. And the Clinton Elderly Housing Committee, Building Committee, was that appointed by the Board of Selectmen, or how was that formed?
No, the first selectman, James McCusker, who was deceased, created an ad hoc committee in 2004.
Now, both the Clinton Housing Authority and the Clinton Elderly Housing Committee, I believe, are both still listed on the website,
Maybe, I don't know.
and they are both still listed in the Blue Book of appointed, and they were certainly as of May of 2012, which I have provided in evidence. But they would have been, at least the Housing Authority would have to have been appointed by the Board of Selectmen.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, you say the return address was just a convenience?
That's
that
correct.
That was granted to you by the first selectman. Did you ever consider the fact that the people who you were the state you were asking for a loan would have considered that address when granting a loan, that it was a little misleading, that the address of the town hall was being used?
No, I didn't consider it that way. As a matter of fact, the mailing address for us, and also which was changed at the controller's office, was we fed the funds into the account, was changed to a P.O. box.
Now, the town of Clinton subsequently granted a tax abatement. Is that correct? And that tax abatement was granted to whom?
It was granted to the limited partnership.
That's what, to the limited partnership?
That's correct.
It was not to Clinton Housing?
That's correct.
Okay. And I believe that it's been said that all of the people working on this are volunteers. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Has there been any compensation for anyone working for Clinton Housing, Inc., or let me put it that way, any of the directors or officers receiving compensation for that?
Mr. Officer, at this point, I think we're kind of getting into Mr. Carr's substantive kind of beefs, if you will. You know, if he wants to ask, is there any compensation paid by the town of Clinton? I mean, that's fine. But I'm just not seeing what this has to do. I think we're segueing into his whatever you want to call it. I don't want to use a disparaging term, but his quest in this matter, not whether or not we're subject to FOI.
Why would I need to know whether they're receiving compensation from a private source?
Okay, then I guess the question is, are they receiving compensation from the town?
Not from anyone.
Okay, not from anyone. Oh, that's right. Okay. Thank you very much. I think that was...
Just one question, sir. If you know, when's the last time the town ad hoc affordable housing building committee met?
Several years ago. I'd have to look and see. It's several years ago.
Thanks, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I'd like to ask just a few questions to Terry Salcedo, if I could.
Okay. I guess that's the designated witness chair.
Okay.
Kind of like it.
Hi.
Hi.
You're the director of property management for the company we've been referring to as NeighborWorks, is that
Yes.
right? And they're the controlling partner, if you will, of the project we're talking about?
I'm just going to ask you to back up and ask the first question again, because I'm
Okay.
on my train of thought.
You are the director of property management for the company that we've been calling NeighborWorks.
Yes,
And NeighborWorks is actually DBA, right?
correct.
And what does NeighborWorks do?
We are, we own properties, we're property management, we do affordable housing throughout the south central end of Connecticut. We own properties, we have partners in the affordable housing, as you're calling it, the LIHTC,
LIHTC.
LIHTC.
Okay. I call LIHTC, whatever. LIHTC, LIHTC, that's the same thing, right?
Right.
Okay. And how long have you been working in the affordable housing field, if you will?
I believe 1982 is when the tax credit world opened. However, prior to that, I was with the project-based Section 8, so probably over 28 years, 28, 30
Okay, and
years.
you have substantial work experience with both LIHTC-funded projects and project-based Section 8 projects?
Yes.
Okay. And in LIHTC projects, there are restrictions as to the maximum income that residents
Correct.
can have, and there's restrictions as to how much of the residents' income they can pay for rent. Is that right?
Correct. We use the area median income for the counties.
Okay. Now, on a LIHTC project, if somebody fails the maximum you know, if somebody would be paying more rent to live in a project than they're allowed, they're not allowed to live in that project, is that right?
Correct. You're out of compliance, so person cannot make more than that area median income, not even by 1 cent.
Okay. And in Connecticut, what government agency or body oversees compliance with the LIHTC regulations?
That is CHFA and Spectrum. So CHFA, we follow their guidelines, and the audits go through a company that they use.
Okay, so Spectrum's just a vendor for CHFA?
Correct.
So ultimately, it's CHFA?
It's CHFA.
Right, okay. So, and how does the, how does it work? How does CHFA, whether through Spectrum or otherwise, make sure that the owners of LIHTC projects are following the, meeting the income guidelines?
So they have our AMIs, area median income, set based upon your counties. And we have to income verify, third party income verify for income, assets, and student. And then we are.
What does CHFA do?
They
Not
actually
what the
audit
owner
our
does.
files. Each year, 20% of our files are audited per property by CHFA.
So they come in and they look at your files to make sure
They
You're
audit the
meeting.
files and inspect the units.
And what kind of day-to-day control does CHFA have over the operation of a LIHTC project, in your experience?
Well, they audit our operating expenses.
No, but I'm talking about day-to-day control. I mean, to what extent do they come in day-to-day
They don't
and say,
come in.
rent to this person, don't rent to this, paint this door, that kind of thing?
They don't do that. We have a budget that we have to be approved prior to the end of each year as far as what needs to be done on the property. So we follow that, but as far as your residents, they do not, prospects, they do not say, oh, don't rent to that one, don't rent to that. We have a tenant selection plan that we have to also be approved by CHFA that we must follow.
But apart from that, the owner runs the project,
Correct.
CHFA comes in periodically, does a spot check, make sure you're
Correct.
doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I'd like to contrast the LIHTC project with, very briefly, with that project-based Section 8 project. Can you just tell us what a Section 8, what a project-based Section 8 project is?
So project-based Section 8 is through Housing and Urban Development, which is HUD. You are, the difference between that and the tax credit project-based Section 8, a resident or an applicant who is going to live on your property, they pay 30% of their gross income less any deductions. It's a set, there's a certain maximum rent that HUD allows you to charge per house, per bedroom size and household people, the amount of people. And then HUD pays 70% of the government money to the property, to that unit.
By the way, in a LIHTC project, is there any maximum rent you can charge?
It's a market rent, so there's a maximum that you are allowed to charge, but the person is not permitted to pay over that amount.
But again, I want to make sure that this difference comes out. In a LIHTC project, if a person, let's say they're only allowed to pay 30% of their income, but it would take 40% of their income to pay the rent, pay the market rent. They're not allowed to
They're
rent
not.
there.
They can't.
Whereas with a project-based Section 8 project, whatever, they can live there, and whatever the difference is between the maximum allowable percentage of their income, that's just given to the project by
Correct.
to defray the cost of running the project.
Correct.
Whereas, a LIHTC project, the rent you get from tenants has to cover.
It has to cover their rents, rent
And
and utilities.
It has to cover all of the operating expenses of the project.
Correct.
And debt service, right?
Correct.
So in a LIHTC project, there's no rent subsidies.
There's none.
And whereas in a project-based Section 8 project, rent subsidies is what the project's all about.
Correct.
Is that true? Okay. Can you give some examples of the kinds of government regulation that you're subject to in a project-based Section 8 project that you're not subject to, like a LIHTC project.
The big one is student. So in project-based Section 8, you're permitted to be a student, and in the project-based Section 8, you're only accounting for a certain amount of the income for a full-time student. However, in the tax credit property, one of the examples for student is if a whole household is a full-time student, they don't qualify to live at that property.
What about evictions? Are there any special regulations for evicting tenants in LIHTC projects other than the ones required by the landlord in the state?
You know, for a tax credit property, first month, you can evict them on the 11th day. What we do is on the 11th day, we send a notice.
But that's the same
right
for
away.
every single landlord, state, right?
Mhm.
And how does that differ, in a Section 8?
Project-based Section 8, you're more lenient to do your evictions. I mean, you still do the same eviction process.
Just in general, it's fair to say that there's a lot more regulation and government involvement in the Section 8 project.
With the Section 8 property,
And again,
and with vouchers.
I don't, we don't need to get too much in the weeds. The big thing I want to get out is that the Section 8 project, you're getting free money from the government to run your project, whereas, in a LIHTC project, you're not.
You have to, on the Section 8 project, when you have to actually, when you do your monthly billing, you've got to let them know that there's an eviction that's going on because they have the right to stop your subsidy coming in on that unit.
And when you say they, you mean?
HUD.
Okay, thanks, that's all I have.
Scott?
Yes, thank you. Couple of things. In the light which you are currently working in, are there tenants who are receiving vouchers to pay for their?
On different properties, you know, the state of Connecticut, you don't deny anyone, so if someone comes to a property and they have a Section 8 voucher, as long as they qualify, there's a whole piece that they need to qualify for. You know, we're not going to turn anyone away because they have a voucher.
Right, so you do have vouchers, and those vouchers, when you get the voucher, the state pays you?
It depends on which housing authority it is, correct?
So the housing authority that issued the voucher pays you?
Correct.
Okay. Do you have any idea what percentage of your tenants are subject to receiving?
You mean in this project or LIHTC projects in general?
Well, obviously, this project is not
Built.
built, but you're in the neighborhood works project, and maybe this is a big leap, that this will probably be somewhat similar to neighborhood works.
I
And they-
couldn't tell you off the top of my head how many we have.
So you don't
I can
know,
tell you that we do accept them.
but you don't know whether it's 10%, 20%,
No.
50%, okay. You mentioned that the budget for, I guess, maintenance is approved. Is that approved, who's that approved by?
So we do an annual budget that has to be each year submitted to CHFA for their final approval, so it doesn't look like, that somebody has to look over your budget as to what you're doing.
Right.
And so that gets submitted usually October, November. They look it through, so yay, nay, yes, you can have this, why do you want that?
To your knowledge, do private landlords have to have their budgets approved by CHFA?
If it's a private landlord, somebody that owns, and they have a mortgage through CHFA, if it's, 3-family house, no. It's just a mortgage that they.
So that is a form of regulation that a private entity does not probably face. And you also mentioned that they inspect the units, is that?
Yes, they do.
Do they, you
Or
mentioned that
sanitary.
they audit 20% of your files?
Correct.
Do they inspect a similar number of units, or?
20%, so the 20% that they check, and you don't know which units they're doing until the day you get there. 20% of the units, and the same 20% of the units are the same 20% of inspections.
But that's a form of regulation that a private entity would not expect it to be subject to.
Now, because you pay your mortgage, and as long as you pay your mortgage for 3 or 4 family house, they're not looking at that.
Now, if I understand it, if, to be a tenant in one of your buildings, if the rent is more than 30% of the tenant's income, they cannot be, they're not in compliance, and if their income is over the median, over the 50% median, they can't be. So there's a range.
So there's a range, right, so the area median income, depending on what property you're talking about, we're talking about Liberty Point, so it's 50%. However, other properties are set up with different area medians, 25, 50, 60. So, but Liberty Point is 50, and they cannot be a penny over. If you're a penny over in their income, they don't qualify. You actually lose your tax credits. That investor loses its tax credits, and we can be forced to go all the way back to day one.
And if they are, if their income, the 30%, the part, if it's over 30%, then they would not comply. So if it's under 30%, that's also, so it's a penny over, penny under, right?
Well, if you're less than 30%, how are you going to afford a rent that you don't have the income to substantiate?
Right, and the voucher portion of that, does that count toward either of these amounts, is 30 or 50%?
So it's the same thing, it's a market. So the voucher amount, the dollar amount is set by the housing authority,
Right.
whoever you're getting your voucher from. So we say to them, this is how much the max rent is, and it's up to them as to the housing authority to verify what their income is. We also verify it on our end so that it matches. However, because we do reporting, but they set the 30% of what that person pays, and then we get the 70% from them.
That voucher, I guess, the voucher amount, how is that counted toward the 30-50 range? Is that?
They get the same AMI, so they have the same set aside that we do, the area median income that they follow.
So the voucher would never put them over the 50%?
No, as a matter of fact, if you're like Clinton, if somebody's from Bridgeport and they want to voucher out there, send out for their voucher to come from another city, and say the rent is maxed at 900, but the housing authority from Bridgeport says you can move to Clinton, but we're only going to pay, instead of 900, we'll pay you 800.
Because the
we have
AMI.
to accept, correct, because the AMI is different, we do accept that. And it's still based on their 30%.
Thank you very much.
Just one or two returns, please. I want to talk about the vouchers for a second. We're talking about Section 8 vouchers. That's
Those
total-
project-based section.
There's-
It's different, you have project-based Section 8, which is not portable,
Okay.
and then you have the housing authority voucher.
So a housing authority, a portable housing authority voucher can be used in any project, whether it's light-tech, non-light-tech, 100%,
Mhm.
any project you could use it. Correct?
You can be an owner of, a townhouse.
It's illegal for any landlord. So if you're the owner of a light-tech project, you can't discriminate against people with portable vouchers, just like everybody else in the state of Connecticut.
5 or more.
Okay, that's right. Thanks, that's all I have.
I'm sorry, 5 or more, what is?
So if you own a project with 5 or more units,
Yes.
you cannot.
Let me just ask, I don't think I need to know this to make a decision, but I wanted to understand the income restriction. When you talked about 50%, for example, you were talking about 50% of the area median income?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
That's all I have. I have submitted the brief. I want to just state there's various arguments of smaller points I make in the brief that I have been wanting to
Okay.
situation here. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Lawler, what would you like to do?
I'm Dave Burris.
I'm sorry.
No, as Attorney Hoops mentioned, there's
Yes.
substantial overlap, and really everything that has been put on for Clinton Housing applies in the second case as well. The minor difference is that the limited partnership does in fact own the property at this point, but I think the rest of the testimony and as to the four-prong test are still the same. It's still a private entity. And all those everything's the same.
You're adopting his argument essentially, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I suppose. Okay, I think between what I've heard and the extensive submissions that both parties have sent me, I think I can work my way through this. Did you have anything that you wanted to say to sum up, Mr. Carr?
No, I mean, I think clearly they've, gone to great lengths to try to make their case, and I've learned a lot from the exercise, so I appreciate the time they put into it. I do think that the amount of government involvement in this, and the amount of money from the state, whether it's a loan or tax incentives or whatever, it's in the public's interest to be able to have some transparency, which is what I think the FOIA Act is here to do, and I would appreciate if you'd find in favor of that.
It's always in the public's interest to have transparency, even if it's not at the government.
Well,
I'm just talking about public interest, I'm not talking about the law.
There is something I did want to say.
Yes,
I could,
please.
and I do appreciate the act. Do truly appreciate that. I think it's important that, and I think the reason we're putting, so much, he asked for one document that we don't have any problem giving him, and that they'll say the document that he asked for to the limited partnership actually happens to be one of our exhibits. So the point is the documents. The point is that this is actually kind of an important issue. There's a lot of private entities that use LIHTCs in the state of Connecticut to develop affordable housing, and this decision will affect all of them. And it'll also affect the decision-making of the private investors whose equity infusions are absolutely critical to make this whole affordable housing program work. I think it's safe to say that the developers who use LIHTCs to develop affordable housing projects and the investors who invest in them to get the tax credits that they so covet, very safe to say that in their wildest dreams, they don't imagine that they're acting functionally as a government agency and that they would be subject to the burdens of the FOI Commission. And I say that recognizing that there's a very, very laudable purpose in the public sector for those burdens to be imposed on government because of all policy reasons, favor of open government and transparency. But, those considerations really don't have any applicability or any place in the private sector, and we are in the private sector.
Well, we can agree or disagree about that, but my only role is to determine whether these entities are public or not.
Right. The only other thing I would add is that when this amount of money from tax credits or what have you is floating around, there is opportunity for abuse, and the FOA, I think, protects from some of that abuse.
I would say to that CHFA is clearly a public agency, and, people have every right to go to CHFA and get their records, but you're talking about private investors, private entities.
I understand the limited question before me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This hearing is adjourned.